deny vegan because you want to be ill and miserable.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule.
A lot of people loved watching the interactions. I was veganizing a lot of people. A lot of eyeballs could see these messages.
Continue watching to find out more.
Bienvenidos, warm-hearted viewers. That was welcome in Spanish. My name is Gabriel. The hospitable Nicaraguan people wish your lives are healthy, vibrant, and blessed. Welcome to Vegan Batgirl Connie Spence, Part 1 of 4, The Giant Spotlight. Among the multitude of activists in the surging vegan movement, Connie Spence definitely is one of a kind with her no-nonsense style. In today's program, we will introduce you Connie Spence, an 11-year vegan who pushes the envelope to drive more conversations and eyeballs toward veganism. Noticing the constraints that exist in many activism events, requiring the presence of a large number of activists to create an impact, Connie Spence devised a unique way to reach multitudes of people by spotlighting outsized vegan messages on building walls. Her innovative approach earned her the nickname Vegan Batgirl. We had the opportunity to interview her in February 2021. Let's find out how it all started for her.
I was one of those meat eaters that knew a few vegetarians, were annoyed by them, and said, and I quote, "Kill me if I ever turn vegetarian." And I, like a year later, turned vegetarian. So you can never lose hope on people that kind of have that strict stance about their meat eating, because like you just never know. 13 years ago, I went vegetarian. I gave up mostly everything besides cheese. I was the classic cheese holdout. 3 years after going vegetarian, I had already given up milk. I'd already given up wearing leather. And I had a boss that had what he called a mini heart attack. And his doctor from Boulder, Colorado, told him he had to commit to being vegan for a certain amount of time to prevent himself from dying young. And I watched his transformation, and it really did take a short amount of time to get somebody who had a mini heart attack, had already started scheduling like different procedures, like putting a stent in to be able to combat his heart issue. And that doctor basically saved his life. And it didn't take long. It took like 2 months. With that said, that was when I kind of dove into veganism. I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to set a date. And the date I'm going to give up cheese is June 2010. So I committed to it. It was kind of hard for the first 2 or 3 weeks, but after that, once you create a game plan and you find, replacements and you're satisfied and they're convenient, it was pretty easy. So this was 2010.
As far as what motivated Connie to become a vegan activist, she continued.
I knew nothing about activism. Social media was just transitioning from MySpace to Facebook. 2009, 2010, if you don't remember. People were still like, what is this Facebook college thing? And so anyways, all of a sudden, I would say in 2014, I started seeing people sharing activism events on Facebook, and I started getting involved with that. I think I did a few fur protests when I lived in New York City. I did some marches when I lived in Los Angeles. I did some cubes of truth with holding the laptop and showing animal abuse in public. I went to save events. And then I created my own form of activism, which is where the name Vegan Batgirl comes from.
Treasured viewers, we'll be back after this short message. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television.
A man can live and be healthy without killing animals for food. Therefore, If he eats meat, he participates in taking animal life merely for the sake of his appetite, and to act so is immoral. Leo Tolstoy, vegetarian.
Welcome back to our program. After reading an article about a guy using light to show a printed message on a wall, Connie was thrilled about this idea and wanted to find out about the source he used. Let's hear her fascinating story.
As an advertiser, I wanted to get as many eyeballs as possible on my message. So I'm like, okay, well, we should centralize our money to do advertisements. But it was really hard to get people to like centralize the type of money that you could put in, an ad on TV. Light isn't vandalism, which is fascinating to me. Someone told me to go to a lighting store in Los Angeles, basically the lighting store, equipment stores for concerts and for movie studios. And I went there and they showed me the equipment. It was a really high, powerful light. And then you need a generator to be able to be a power source for that high-powered light.
Connie did all it took to figure out how to generate the powerful light she needed, and her determination paid off, allowing her to start showing powerful and persuasive vegan messages on building walls.
And so I instantly started using that light with vegan messages, and someone said it looks like a Batman light, and I was like, it sure does. And so then Vegan Batgirl became the name, which is kind of silly, right?
What an amazing story. Connie's previous 15-year career in advertising and software business development helped her create the Vegan Batman Light to project 70 by 70 feet messages of truth and compassion onto the sides of buildings in order to transform people's attitudes. The purpose of these messages was to reach a larger audience and help people make the connection between their purchases and the harrowing torture of innocent animals.
And a lot of people loved watching the interactions. I was veganizing a lot of people. A lot of eyeballs could see these messages. So if you can imagine a giant message that talked about veganism in some way being on a giant wall like the Staples Center in Los Angeles, or even the Slaughterhouse in Los Angeles. I went to Vegas with it and put it on Vegas hotels. Pretty much anywhere that there was a blank wall, I would put it on.
Connie knew nothing about dealing with the police, but had to interact with them at least 75 times. Her great knowledge of the law saved her from being shut down when she was using the light about 3 or 4 times a week.
And the types of interactions had police coming sometimes thinking that the light was a bazooka. Like they thought, and it kind of looks like they thought it was a bazooka, and they got called. I was shining it on an oil refinery in Oklahoma, and they got called, and they came with their sirens and they were ready to pull their guns, this sort of thing. It was pretty wild. I've had helicopters shine their light on me. I've had drones. I put it on a water tower alongside of a freeway, and I had another set of police come that were sort of harassing me. But for the most part, I've barely ever been shut down. I think I've been shut down 2 times, and both times were after the generator was almost going to go out anyway. So we communicated and talked, and they brought a bunch of extra police officers and called extra, basically backup. They're trying to find a law that I was breaking. And so by the time that all happened, I had already had the light up there for 2.5 or 3 hours, which is about the time frame that the generator lasts anyway. So it was always pretty successful.
We were happy to learn that Connie has been safe while engaging in non-violent activities to send out her vegan messages. We thank the beautiful and compassionate Connie Spence for her powerful activism. Join us again next Thursday, October 28th, to learn about the horrifying truth of our food system on Vegan Batgirl, Connie Spence, Part 2 of 4, The Food System. We salute your efforts, Connie, and wish for everyone to understand your message that veganism is the easiest and only solution that can heal our world from the ongoing crisis virtually overnight. To find out more about Connie Spence, please visit instagram.com/vegan_Batgirl, website agriculturefairnessalliance.org, liberation360.org, vegan justice. In today's program, Connie walks us through the history of the food system and politics in the US, more specifically, how the system is rigged to undermine the law of supply and demand in favor of the livestock industry. After a highly successful foray into spotlighting her powerful vegan messages, Connie was energized and enthused about inspiring more people to choose the compassionate vegan diet by showing them how many animal lives are saved by the plant-based diet.
I started checking the USDA numbers to see how many animals we saved, because some of my messages with the Batman light would say each person can save 100 to 200 animals a year by not eating them. I would put those stats on a Batman light. So I wanted to find out, okay, now I'm meeting all these vegans. We're seeing all of these new plant-based companies becoming mainstream. We're seeing the economics of those plant-based companies doing really well. We're seeing headlines that the dairy industry is failing or that we're perceiving it that it's failing because there's bankruptcies left and right. We're seeing shelves at grocery stores. It doesn't matter if you're in a big market like LA, or if you're in a really small rural area, you're seeing the shelves near the dairy milk have 20% to 50% of plant-based milks right next to it. So I'm thinking, okay, these numbers should be shifting and changing.
To her surprise, Connie found out that the livestock raising business had continued to expand, all the while raising and killing more animals.
So I started looking at the USDA production numbers and I started comparing them with population increases. And what I found out is basically that the production keeps increasing. And I'm like, this can't be the case like every year. I start looking at losses, and there are a lot of years with reported a lot of losses in money on headlines, but then sequentially you'll find a headline talking about a bailout. And I started finding out stockpile numbers, basically that we were stockpiling unsold meat and dairy, and the amounts we were stockpiling were crazy. And if we have a stockpile because of oversupply the year before, then your expectation would be that next year that they're going to reduce supply. And instead, they increase supply. And I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. An industry couldn't do that if they were losing money. And I was like, where is this money coming from? And then those bailout articles started making sense.
When Connie delved further into the details of the bailouts, she started learning about the truth behind the US food policy, about the Farm Bill, subsidies, bailouts, and more, which totally invalidates the fundamental rule of supply and demand in an economy.
The livestock industry is part of the foundation of this country. The colonizer turned into the farmer, turned into the slave owner, turned back into the farmer. The same practices used upon animals were used upon slaves. The food system was the part of the foundation of this country. Back then, the first 4 out of 5 presidents were farmers, and close to, anywhere from 75 to 99% of people were farmers. A lot of things happened during Reconstruction. In the early 1900s, you start seeing farmers experiencing a lot of loss because of them actually degrading the soil. In 1933, or as a response to the Great Depression, FDR approved the Agriculture Act of 1933, and that now is what is considered the Farm Bill today.
President Roosevelt sought to help farmers to boost crop production by implementing the New Deal, including the first Farm Bill, which was passed in 1933. It was a program that increased prices by paying farmers to limit their production, thereby essentially guaranteeing that they received a minimum wage for the crops they produced. In 1938, Congress established the program on a permanent basis to be renewed every 5 years. There have been 18 farm bills to date, the most recent being the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018. The provisions in the bill will last until 2023, at which time a new farm bill will be negotiated. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. Genesis, Holy Hebrew Bible. Attentive viewers, we'll be back after this short message. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television. Welcome back to our program. The Farm Bill is regulated by the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, the federal executive department that is responsible for developing and executing federal laws related to farming, forestry, rural economic development, and food. The department aims to end hunger in the United States and internationally by meeting the needs of commercial farming and livestock food production, promoting agricultural trade, assuring food safety, protecting natural resources, and fostering rural communities. In the 1970s, when large corporations entered the agriculture business, the government made big cuts to the Farm Bill programs. Corporations became the primary price setters and have been paying farmers less and less for their crops. Big farms can make do with lower prices by scaling up their production, but not small farms like family farmers. Eventually, many small farms lost money and the owners sold their land and moved away, which was described precisely by the former United States Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue. In America, the big get bigger and the small go out. In 2019, small American farmers were nearing extinction. Most agribusinesses are controlled by large multinational corporations. While farmland stretches far and wide, farmers and ranchers themselves make up just 1.3% of the employed US population, a steep decline from 1935. Yet, they're still one of the strongest and most powerful industries in the United States.
Today, the population of farmers is like 1 to 1.5%. So I need to figure out when the system was rigged to figure out how 1.5% of the population technically has control of the food system. One of the most contested bills, by the way, again, right in front of our faces in Congress is the Farm Bill. And the Farm Bill is what assigns how much subsidies go to the agriculture industry. It assigns new programs that are safety nets, programs that bail them out, programs that are insurance policies.
A subsidy is a financial benefit from a government that gives the advantage to a specific industry or business funded by our tax dollars. A bailout is the injection of money into a business or organization that would otherwise face imminent collapse, again funded by our tax dollars. Furthermore, some components within the Farm Bill are particularly shocking, such as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, formerly food stamps. 80% or more of Farm Bill expenditures go for SNAP, paying people only when they consume animal products.
So the Farm Bill, the SNAP program specifically, is actually a false sense of demand for livestock because the SNAP program, for the most part, is only allowed at certain stores and only allowed on certain products. And a lot of those products are meat and dairy focused. And so one of the things that we can talk about later is food accessibility and our organization trying to expand the SNAP program to be more inclusive of vegan products. I mean, this food system is rigged. So basically what happens is, I know when we're speaking to our vegan audience, and as vegans we're doing activism and we're talking to non-vegans, we talk a lot about our consumer dollar voting and we talk a lot about supply and demand. But the sad truth is that our tax dollars, bailing them out, is in direct competition with your consumer dollars. Yeah, this is a great segue to like where this activism changed course. And I realized that I can't just focus on consumer behavior because the Farm Bill is a great example of a bill that undermines our veganism because it helps and supports so drastically with our taxes the agriculture system, not the agriculture system specifically, livestock and dairy. I mean, it must change the way our taxes are being used. It's thievery, in my opinion. I am so consciously making sure that my shoes aren't leather, my purses aren't leather, that nothing on me or in my house exploits an animal, but then your taxes are taken out, 20 to 40% of them every year, and it's going to do the opposite of what your intention was. And all those animals you thought you were saving, they're just saying, hey, we have your taxes, so what can you do? We have to create a channel of communication to politicians. We have to make our demands, and we have to hold them accountable, and we can't do that by holding a sign outside. Activism augments our lobbying demands.
Indeed, we need to hold the politicians accountable for a sustainable food system that puts the most basic human moral values above greed for profits. We thank the beautiful and compassionate Connie Spence for her inspirational activism. Join us again next Thursday, November 4th on Vegan Batgirl, Connie Spence, Part 3 of 4. To learn about Connie Spence's lobbying work via her organization Vegan Justice League Liberation 360. We salute your efforts and wish for governments to soon implement fair policies in agriculture. To find out more about Connie Spence, please visit Instagram, instagram.com/vegan_Batgirl, website agriculturefairnessalliance.org, liberation360.org, veganjusticeleague.com.
Last week, Connie helped us to understand some aspects of the food system in the USA. In today's program, we will explore the Vegan Justice League, also known as Liberation 360, an organization and social movement that calls for the reform of the food system in the US. After finding about the size and power of the meat and dairy industries in the US, and learning that not one single animal is saved despite the growing number of vegans and demand for plant-based food, Connie felt the need to urgently amend the broken US food policies, which lead to lopsided subsidies in favor of the animal industries. She started looking around for existing individuals and organizations who were like-minded and already on the way of such a mission.
I wanted to see if there was a federal group that was actually laser focused on reducing the stockpile. And so when I didn't really find one, I'm like, I'm going to find the right people, I'm going to start one. So I founded Vegan Justice League.
Laura Rees, the co-founder of Vegan Justice League, gave up her 18-year career in the semiconductor industry and started lobbying Congress on behalf of farm animals in 2018. Looking into the systems, policies, and laws which needed to be changed to fix the system. Connie Spence and Laura Rees realized that the changes would cover equity among farmers, equity among food consumers, fairer subsidies, and environmental protection, including multiple issues related to social justice. They decided to change the name Vegan Justice League to Liberation 360 to reflect the extensive changes that will affect farmers, consumers, animals, and almost every aspect of our lives. Their strategy is to use education to bring about greater social awareness, as well as lobbying for improved laws and policies in order to realize the changes needed.
So that's why we created two arms. Agriculture Fairness Alliance is our lobbying arm. Vegan Justice League became the education arm. We are now going to be an education arm called Liberation 360. I have a co-founder named Laura Rees who works directly with our lobbyists. She manages volunteers to work specifically on the legislation side. I'm going to be handling Liberation 360 on the education side so that we can start educating
In order to showcase the work that Liberation 360 does, let us take a closer look at the issues caused by current policies on livestock raising agriculture in the USA.
Subsidies are basically things that pay for overhead costs, right? So our taxes pay for livestock's overhead cost. It pays for their water, it pays for the land, it pays for equipment, it pays for the feed of the animals. That's how you get a burger on the dollar menu and a head of lettuce costs $2. It's because our taxes are paying for all of those overhead costs on that side. And our taxes aren't paying for the overhead cost of the lettuce. They can make it inexpensive and accessible. The subsidies also include insurance policies. Those insurance policies are safety nets. Some of them are based on the death of the animal. Some of them are based on losses, loss protection. If you think about how this system is set up, it is actually set up to reward the mega farmers. A person that has under 1,000 head of cattle might not be able to participate in all these safety nets that I mentioned. So small farmers are actually suffering, and they aren't getting the subsidies and the programs as much as the larger mega farmers. 98% of all farmer subsidy recipients are white, making it one of the most systemically racist profiles of all industries of who is in control of who is exploited. And then subsidies is really welfare for the rich in this situation. Many are farm investors. They don't even live on the farm. Each individual can get up to $900,000. Their wife can get another $900,000. The only requirement is that those people show up on the farm one time a month. They don't have to work there. A lot of their addresses are in Manhattan. It is a fail-proof investment. They have gamed the system. A lot of these farmer families are investors. And what they do is they create an indentured servitude type of situation where they're taking the taxes and they have a farmer leasing their land and tending to their land. And then they hire undocumented workers to basically cheap labor. We work with farmers and interview them a lot. The small farmers are struggling. A lot of people don't realize this, but one of the largest trafficking of human trafficking is in agriculture systems. Children who are non-citizens don't have the protections of working that children that are citizens have. So there are a lot of children that are under the age of 12. People feel like animals don't have a voice, right? And that humans do, and therefore they don't need to advocate for humans. But we need to understand that our ability to change this world from the oppressive systems does include people.
In fact, Connie suggests that an anti-oppression vegan movement is a more appropriate description of what they are doing.
Gambling, eating meat, wine bibbing, adultery, hunting, thieving, debauchery, these 7 things in this world lead to the hells. Sanskrit Saloka, Jainism.
Treasured viewers, we'll be back after this short message. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television. Welcome back to our program. Connie also told us about the bailouts.
Bailouts are basically a large amount that is supposed to be a direct payment that steps in to pay for their losses. When a bailout comes in and it wipes clean all our losses, not only the losses that we had, but in some years overpays them. We literally made them profit off of a loss of demand. So the signal of loss never happens. So then the next year they overproduce again and you bail them out again. They become incentivized to overproduce because the more losses they have, the more money you're creating with an artificial demand of a bailout.
Before the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a huge stockpile due to overproduction. During the pandemic, we saw milk dumping and animals being euthanized so that the farm could produce loss.
You really saw it happening during the pandemic in the last year. Slaughterhouses were closed, and because of that, they were having a backfill on the farms of pigs. And they didn't want to keep those pigs around because they weren't earning them any money. So they got bailouts and they euthanized them.
In the US, subsidies to the agriculture sector typically run around $20 billion per year. In 2020, bailouts rocketed that number to over $50 billion.
last year, imagine restaurants and schools all being closed. The losses were huge. With the pandemic and all the shutdowns and all of the bailouts that they saw, our bailouts, our money bailing them out, made 2020 one of the most profitable years for livestock. So the reality is that when we buy Beyond Meat and an Impossible Burger, we get these products to become unicorn stocks and we see how well they're doing. Those signals of losses to the meat and dairy side aren't being felt. And Beyond Meat and Impossible Burger, are they going and making sure that animals are being saved? We didn't go vegan to have a bunch of fast food restaurants have vegan options. We didn't go vegan to go to vegan potlucks and meet a bunch of vegan friends. We went vegan to save animals. I don't define success off of how many plant-based milks are on the grocery shelf. I define success on how many animals are saved. And this is where I say, like, where being vegan isn't enough, being an activist on the street isn't enough, the language that politicians speak is lobbying. So we have to create that communication channel. Going vegan is the first step. It is not enough to achieve animal liberation. To achieve animal liberation, we have to get political.
This is why, according to Connie, Liberation 360 is not just about veganism, but also political action and social movement.
Our organization, agriculturefairnessalliance.org, and Liberation 360 are staunch with our anti-oppression themes. This is an abolition lobbying group, and we are about animal liberation, but we are anti-oppression and advocate for human issues as well. Our group needs to be educating more than just vegans about the food system being political, politicized, marginalizing people, oppressive. First we went vegan, then we became activists, and now we must lobby.
We thank the intelligent and compassionate Connie Spence and Laura Rees for their work towards animal liberation. We pray their efforts will soon yield fruit as governments actualize policies in favor of plant-based agriculture. To find out more about Connie Spence, please visit instagram.com/vegan_Batgirl. Website agriculturefairnessalliance.org, liberation360.org, veganjusticeleague.com.
No to vegan, 'cause the heaven road is too small for your massive co-killing karma.
In today's program, we will focus on its sister organization, Agriculture Fairness Alliance, or AFA, does to counter the political influence of the meat and dairy industries. Agriculture Fairness Alliance is the legislation arm of Connie's activism, and these three outstanding women activists, Laura Rees, Renee King-Sonen, and Connie Spence, work together to make U.S. agriculture laws and policies fairer. Let's hear Connie tell us how the three intrepid women met.
So I founded Vegan Justice League a year ago. My co-founder actually was doing something very similar. Laura Rees worked with a group called Lobbyists for Good, which essentially teaches the public how to lobby and get involved. The good news about federal lobbying is that on the federal level, you hire lobbyists. And all we're really doing is quarterbacking professional people that live and breathe how to change the narrative, how to get legislation passed. Renee from Rowdy Girl Sanctuary was a rancher's wife who transitioned her farm, the cattle farm, into a sanctuary. When that happened, she started receiving inquiries from a lot of farmers who wanted to do the same thing. They needed help to get out of livestock farming and help to transition. We caught wind of it. Why not create legislation instead of throwing them bailout money? The bailout money fail anyway, and the animals end up in a stockpile. Specifically, we want to bring supply and demand back to agriculture. The next farm bill is voted in by 2023, but we're not going to sit around until 2023. Our first piece of legislation launches this week. The legislation is an at-risk farmer transition and diversification program.
Let's hear Laura introduce this legislation.
So currently we're lobbying for something called the at-risk farmer legislation, which will help animal farmers transition to plant-based farming or green energy production. And the idea is to give farmers more options and opportunities to transition to doing lower impact farming. So rather than finding better ways of doing a harmful thing, which is animal agriculture, let's switch them all together over to plant-based farming. And there's so much opportunity there with the rise of the plant-based food market.
This legislation is the first piece of the jigsaw puzzle to align food policies with health and environment protection. It is not only a value-driven federal food procurement of healthy food, but also supports USDA climate-smart agriculture policy. It has been warmly embraced by many farmers and vegans, including Jane Velez-Mitchell from Jane Unchained News. The livestock raising business pays $18 million a year on lobbying the government to support policies which award them over $52 billion in subsidies and bailouts, giving them a return on investment of over 2,500%. If supported by 1/10 of the estimated 4 in 10 million vegans currently in the United States, the lobbying budget could be matched by the vegan movement. The AFA aims to make this a reality.
If 10% of American vegans gave just $10 a month to us and maybe some other lobbying groups too, and we all coordinated, we would out-influence big animal ag.
However, it could also work by getting one additional lobbyist at a time. If 50 champions pledge to commit $200 per month like Jane Velez-Mitchell did. The AFA posted on Facebook that in 2020, farm subsidies disproportionately favored livestock feed, beef, dairy, and pork production. AFA is lobbying to level the playing field in subsidies and help farmers who want to transition to growing plant-based crops. Connie explains further.
The legislation that we were pitching over the last 2 years to get a sponsor was basically a farm transition program where our taxes gave farmers the opportunity to choose to get out of livestock farming, and that our taxes would incentivize them by helping them transition to plant-based regenerative or regenerative adjacent farming.
Vegan, leave for heaven with a bang.
Attentive viewers, we'll be back after this short message. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television. Welcome back to our program. Lobbying, however, isn't easy, but the project appears to be gaining momentum.
We were up against the livestock industry making their way and getting everything they wanted. And then with the pandemic, everybody's focus turned into bailing them out, right? So it was really hard to be a lobbyist on our side at that time because you weren't able to have live meetings in DC. You were having to now try to get on people's radar through Zoom calls and over the phone. The success is that the conversations that we've had just in the last couple of months have proven that it's very likely that our legislation will get inserted into a broader environmental piece of legislation.
We asked Connie if the vegan or vegetarian members in Congress or in the House actually provided any input to AFA's work, and she shared with us a lesson learned from a mistake they made earlier on.
Our first lobbyist was very much one that had a lot of with what you would call people that were more environmental and more either vegan or perhaps on that type of path. We've since learned that we have to bridge and make sure our legislation and relationships cover the spectrum. We have relationships with those politicians. We don't want to get stuck in just being considered this liberal-leaning vegan legislation because it won't get passed.
The AFA has currently one lobbyist doing an amazing job, and getting a great reception, but it needs more.
We actually are hoping to get sponsorship via someone that doesn't get lodged into one partisan side. Could that shift in a year if we go from having one lobbyist to 5? Absolutely, because then you have 5 people that can create relationships in a different way. And that's necessary. That's actually a necessary goal of scaling. You need to be able to have enough lobbyists so that you can play offense with new legislation and defense with all of the dairy industries and the livestock industries legislation. You have to play defense to the narrative there as well.
Sensible viewers, now let us find out what each and every one of us can do to help Connie's organization fight for the liberation of animal co-citizens and a vegan world.
So we have one lobbyist now. As mentioned, we pay for that lobbyist with members' fees. We hope to grow that as more members come in. So you can become a member at agriculturefairnessalliance.org. So becoming a member, helping us continue to educate, and if you're in a socioeconomic condition that you can't donate, networking and sharing our stuff is super important. Lobbying on the state level is something you can actually personally go do. If you like speaking in public and you want your voice to be heard, why does it have to be on the street all the time? Why not plan people to go to lobby local districts and other platforms that give the community the opportunity to? So on the local and state level, you can get involved and speak the same way you speak to people in activism, getting laws changed. If you have the time and you have the will to, speak in public and speak at some of these city council meetings, do it. And if you have the desire that you think you would actually be a great person to run, do that. Part of me thinks that maybe someday I might run for a seat somewhere. I'm one of those people that doesn't have a lot of time because I have a full-time job too. But if I had more time, I absolutely would love to start changing policy.
Go for it, Connie. We are behind you all of the way. We certainly need ethical vegan politicians in the US Capitol who are for the people and the animal co-citizens, who can change the agriculture policies and laws for world justice and peace. Being a vegan is not enough. Let us first go vegan, then become activists, engage politically, and make veganism's values the world standard. We thank the energetic and knowledgeable Connie Spence, Laura Rees, and Renee King Sonnen for their tireless and courageous endeavors to reform the US food system. We salute your efforts and wish that your at-risk farmer transition and diversity legislation will find enthusiastic sponsors and be passed soon. To find out more about Connie Spence, please visit instagram.com/vegan_Batgirl. Website agriculturefairnessalliance.org, liberation360.org, veganjusticeleague.com. Supreme Master Qinghai gratefully present the Shining World Compassion Award to Liberation 360 plus $10,000 as a humble token of helping your work with all love and high salute for your critical endeavors. May you and all your fellow activists enjoy continued success and constant protection by heaven. Supreme Master Qinghai is deeply grateful to the beloved God for all the financial help, comfort, and support to the afflicted and needy, and/or any good cause over the years as a humble vessel for his compassion and love towards his precious children.
Vegan, because we have to be purified again.
Compassionate viewers, thank you for your company today. Coming up next is Heaven Does Not Accept the Killing of the Unborn, Part 3 of 8, on Between Master and Disciples, right after Noteworthy News. May love, justice, peace, and freedom be orchestrated into an all-pervasive heavenly melody, nourishing the soul of every being.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/VEG.